Well, in our last lesson, we looked at 死亡令, and we're still not finished with this problem. This is a bad time in Egypt for the Hebrews. It is not a happy time. So, how is God, how is heaven going to solve this problem? Today, we're going to look at lesson number 42, a cradle that floats. 能够飘在水上的一个摇篮. Have you ever heard of something like that? Whoa! You'll want to stay by as we look at another interesting story from the ancient tales.
Number 42, a cradle that floats. One of the Hebrew women got married and had a baby son. Because of the king's command to throw all the Hebrew boy babies into the river Nile, she kept her child hidden for 3 months. But when she couldn't keep him hidden any longer, she made a cradle out of reeds. Then she covered it with pitch to make it waterproof. She placed the baby in his floating cradle in the reeds by the river. I guess she was thinking that she could say she had followed the king's command and put the baby in the river. The baby's older sister was watching over the floating cradle. The king of Egypt's daughter came down to the river to bathe. She saw the cradle and sent her maidservant to fetch it for her. When she saw the baby, she felt sorry for him. The baby's sister went to the princess and asked if she should go get a woman to nurse the baby. The princess said yes, so she went and got the baby's mother. Interestingly, the baby went back home, and the princess paid the baby's mother to look after her own child. Later on, the woman brought the boy to the princess, who adopted him as her own son. The princess called him Moses, which means drawn out, because she drew him out of the river. What a delightful story! Here we see a terrible situation for this baby, set adrift on the water because his mother could not hide him any longer, but he is rescued by the king's daughter. Now he grows up as the son of a princess in the palace of the king, in a very privileged position. How ironic that the king's attempt to destroy these people led his own daughter to bring one of them right into his palace. The power of good can defeat the power of evil in very interesting ways.
Okay, one of the Hebrew women got married. Of course, when a young girl grows up, in most cases, they plan on getting married. So one of the Hebrew women, remember 希伯来人, 有一个女人, okay, 嫁给人家, got married, okay, and had a baby son. We say had a baby son, that means she gave birth, 她就生了一个小男孩, 男孩子, okay? Now, because of the king's command, 因为这个王的这个命令, what's the command? To throw all the Hebrew babies in the Nile River, that is the boy babies, throw all the Hebrew baby boys into the Nilohe. She kept her child hidden for 3 months. Okay, now, she kept her child hidden, 这个藏起来3个月. let's go back and let's make sure that we've got that sentence. Because of the king's command to throw all the babies in the river, she kept her child hidden for 3 months. The trouble is, you can't hide something like this forever, especially a child. What do you know about little children? They cry. And so it's very hard to hide. 你要把这个藏起来，好难，好难啊。Going, well, wait a second here. But when she couldn't keep him hidden any longer, she made a cradle out of reeds. Okay, when she couldn't keep him hidden any longer, 没办法继续下去，把它隐藏。Then she made a cradle out of reeds. Okay, reed, do you know what reed is? Along the side of many rivers, not all rivers, but many rivers, you have reeds, 芦苇. It's a plant, and it usually goes quite tall, and the plant has something on top. It looks like, I don't know what it looks like, something round and brown. Okay, and this is a reed. So she took the reeds and she wove them, 就编了 a what? Cradle, 摇篮. Now, 她用这个芦苇做这个摇篮, but it's interesting that she then covered it with pitch. Okay? 为了要使它 waterproof, 防水. Okay? So you have a watch, I have a watch here, and it says, well, I don't know what it says. It says that it's waterproof for a little while, 100 meters, water resistant. Waterproof. That means that the water cannot get in here. So she took this 摇篮, this cradle, and she made it waterproof with pitch. Now, what is pitch? Pitch usually comes from a tree, and it's 黏黏的. Okay? That's called pitch. 这个石漆, I think, or something like that. It usually comes from trees, and it's very sticky. 这个黏黏的. Okay? She placed the baby in this floating cradle, 能漂流的摇篮. She put the baby inside of the floating cradle. Okay? In the reeds, 就是在这个芦苇中间呢. Okay, so you have all these things up here, and so she carefully placed it right there in the reeds. Now, obviously, this is not a permanent solution. 你不能这个永久这样放啊. So she's in the river. She puts it in the river. Maybe the baby says, "Oh, look at the water! Kind of makes me feel happy." But pretty soon he's going to get hungry, right? And the baby is going to start crying, going, "Yes." I guess she was thinking she could say she had followed the king's command and put the baby in the river. 或许她会跟人家说了，哎，我听了王的命令，我把孩子丢在河里面。事实上, it's true that the baby was in the river, but it was in a floating cradle. 这个能够漂流的一个摇篮 ，OK？ followed the king's command, 他的命令，他遵守，他就守他的命令。At least she could say that. The baby's older sister was 远远的 watching over the floating cradle. So she was watching the floating cradle. The king of Egypt's daughter, the king of Egypt's daughter, 这个王的女儿 came down to the river to bathe. She's going to take a bath. She saw the cradle and sent her maidservant, 她的女仆, to go 拿过来, go fetch it for her. So now what's going to happen? What will the king's daughter do? When she saw the baby, she felt sorry for him. 她就可怜他. Of course, she knew what her father had said and the command her father had made. At this point, the baby's sister went to the princess, 来到这个公主，这个 baby 的这个姐姐啊 and she asked if she could go get a woman, 能不能去找一个希伯来这个女人 to 养奶或者养这个小孩子。And guess what? Well, you're just going to have to wait, because I will tell you the rest of the story after we look at light on your path. Now for some light on our path. Today we talk about, or have been talking about, Moses. How about let's look at Jeremiah 29:11.
耶利米书的29章第11节。
Here is what it says, For I know the thoughts I think toward you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope.
圣经说，耶和华说，我知道我向你们所怀的意念，是赐平安的意念，不是降灾祸的意念，要叫你们末后有指望。
Now, this is God's plan for us. He has a hope for us. He has a plan for us.
对，
Now, today we're talking about a little baby, and you asked me a question.
对，我预备了一个问题要问艾老师。上帝他拣选摩西，对不对？那当时摩西只是一个小 baby， 他没有能力，不知道他将来会怎么样。为什么上帝拣选他一个 baby 将来做以色列人的领袖呢？
Well, of course, Lena, God knows everything.
Yeah.
Okay? He can see the future. But the only thing that the baby had was what? 2 parents.
哦，两对父母。
Yeah. And so I would say that God chose the very best parents in all of Egypt.
哦，
So that would probably be the best answer for sure. Later on, we understand Moses became a very great person.
对，很伟大的领袖。
Yeah. So that's the answer. God knows, and He always chooses the very best. Okay, so now we come to the point where the princess said yes, 她答应了. So the baby's sister, who was standing beside, the baby's sister went and got the baby's mother. Whoa, 不简单啊. the baby's sister went to get the baby's mother, and the interesting, 非常有趣的 interestingly, the baby goes back home. Can you imagine that? Here is Egypt and the king of Egypt, and he wants to kill all the baby boys. And yet there is one baby boy, one Hebrew baby boy, who will not be killed. 不会死. Why? Interestingly, the baby went back home, and the princess, 这个公主, paid the baby's mother. So the baby's mother gets paid. 她有薪水. Okay? To 看顾或养她自己的孩子. Okay? Now, isn't this the strange, we say in English, a strange turn of events? 真的很 you can't even make a story like that. I mean, this story is so strange and so wonderful. Okay? Later on, when the boy was, maybe 8 years old or so on, the woman brought the boy, 把那个男孩子带到公主, and the 公主, the princess, the king's daughter, adopted, to adopt, 收养, adopted him 作为她自己的儿子 as her own son. Adopted. That's a good word to keep in mind, to adopt. I have 2 adopted sisters. 我有2个妹妹是收养的啦. In fact, they're the youngest ones in our family. There are 5 children, and 2 of them are adopted. Going on, the princess called him Moses. 公主就叫他摩西 Moses, which means drawn out. I did a little research on this because there's several different ideas about the name. But most of the people think that the name means to draw out, or 从水拿出来, okay? Because she drew him up out of the river. 把他就拿起来. What a delightful story. 一个非常快乐高兴的一个故事 Delightful 非常高兴的一个故事 Well, gotta go on here. We see a terrible situation for this baby, set adrift on the water because the mother couldn't hide him any longer. Of course, 非常可怕的一个情况 Okay? 对这个 baby 来说了 set adrift on the water. What is to drift? To drift 是漂流在水上 To set adrift 是让它漂流在水上 This is actually a 动词 It's a verb. To set adrift means to put something out and let it 漂流 to drift. So we say set adrift. Okay? So the baby is set adrift on the water 在水上 为什么呢? Because his mother could not hide him any longer. Because his mother, 他的母亲没办法 再把它隐藏起来。Okay, going on. But he is rescued. 他是被得救的 by the king's daughter. 王的女儿就救他 to rescue. To rescue, 救 or sometimes we say 被得救 rescued. Now he grows up as the son of the princess. He's going to grow up now as the princess' son. She has adopted him. And where is this little baby now, a boy, probably 8 years old? Where is he going to grow up? In the palace of the king. 这个王宫真的是要王宫长大. Well, not 长大, but I mean he starts when he's at 8 years old. In a very privileged position. That means he will be living in a very privileged position. 他有很多特权啊，特权 ，OK， 他的地位是有非常非常有特权。哇 ，man alive! How ironic! Ironic. Here is ironic. Ironic is 非常可笑，是有矛盾的可笑。That the king's attempt to destroy the people. 他的尝试要毁灭希伯来人这个民族，使他自己的女儿把一位带到他的这个王宫啊 ，the king's palace. Wow! And we end with today's story coming to this point. The power of good can defeat the power of evil in interesting ways. 这个善良会战胜这个恶的势力Now that is interesting. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll come back now to words you need to know. And now for some words you need to know. We're going to begin with an interesting one, waterproof. Can you say?
防水 waterproof.
Yeah, that's very good. That's very good. Water, 防水. Look on the back of your watch. On the back of your watch.
对，后边有防水的。
Yeah, it says waterproof.
还有现在有很多皮包，它也是防水的
Oh, really?
waterproof.
Waterproof. Good. The next one is bathe. B-A-T-H-E.
洗澡。
洗澡. We do this every day.
对，可是不是在河里哦。
I guess not.
对。
Especially in the winter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's take a look at another one. Adopted.
领养、收养。
Okay. To adopt someone means that they're not your own personal children, but you bring them into your family and treat them like your children.
对，现在有很多孩子被领养，然后在那个人的家庭里面长大。
Yeah. Actually, I have 2 adopted sisters.
哦，真的啊。
Yeah. My 2 smallest sisters, 2个最小的妹妹是收养的。 Yeah. So, and they're very nice ladies. Very nice. Of course, we're all old.
但是我想他们很幸福在你的家里。
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And then the last one we're going to look at is rescue.
救 去救他，对不对
Right. And so actually the princess of Egypt, the king's daughter, rescued the baby from the water.
对，他把摩西啊，小小的摩西从水上救回来了。
Yes. So that is a few of the words we need to know. Well, we have noticed in this ancient story that a little boy who should have been killed, 应该是被杀的, he not only lives, but eventually, 终于, he lives in the king's palace, 这王宫, but the story continues. Very interesting, the story continues. Because in the next lesson, number 43, we look at the privileged son, the royal son, becomes a murderer on the run. So you'll want to join us next time for a continuation of this interesting story.
That's all for today, and thanks for watching. If you like Ancient Tales for Today, please visit atft.chinesehope.tv. You may also contact us by writing to ancienttalesfortoday@gmail.com. Again, that's ancienttalesfortoday@gmail.com. Tell your friends about Ancient Tales for Today. See you next time.